Hey everybody, welcome back to the Go Marketing Show. We are one man down. He is recovering for the flu, but fortunately, and the irony of today's show, we are talking about writer's block, or in this case, content block. And the irony is you have two authors, myself and John. John is a novelist. He's got some pretty wicked books. So he asked me this morning, he said, I'm kind of running out of content ideas. And it's funny, our client had the same thing in a follow-up meeting. So we figured, why not? Let's talk about one, how to use AI to generate content, but even more specifically, how to leverage some of your old topics and refresh them and just give new perspectives. So John, why don't you kick it off with some of the questions you had, and we'll do more Q&A style today.
Yeah, sounds good. I think the main thing that I was struggling with this morning when we were talking was like, we're doing this AI series, and I feel like we talk a lot about kind of the same things, like a lot of ChatGPT and how to get the most out of that in different ways. And my biggest concern for today was I don't want to be like super repetitive in what we're doing. I don't want to talk about the same things over and over again. And your response was pretty profound to that. If you can remember some of the things that you said earlier.
Yes, absolutely. I'll try to rehash it. And it's funny, we always joke about this, and it probably happens if you do create a lot of content. You probably be in those contents brainstorming sessions. You're like, we should have recorded that. So step one, I would probably just record some of your brainstorming sessions, because that's where a lot of your great content comes from anyways. But one of the things we see unique, even just a subtle angle or subtle repositioning of the same topic will land differently. So we may produce an episode on like, hey, how to use ChatGPT for brainstorming. And it may have just been bad timing when we released it. Other things might have been going on. So sometimes a fresh perspective on an old topic is just a good way to revive some of your social channels. And you may have a different way of explaining it. And sometimes that subtlety or that way of explaining something is the piece where the person has the aha moment. They're like, oh, now I get it. And more often than not, we're inundated with so much content that, I'm wearing a pink shirt today. I might have been wearing a blue shirt when I explained the same topic, but they may not have caught the attention. So sometimes it's just the pattern interrupt or the different angle that helps. And every time you explain something, you become better at how you explain it and some of the nuances. Now, personally, I'm guilty sometimes of going through things too quickly. So one option might be to slow down, go through the topic and the steps in more depth, and break it into a series. Like, hey, for example, when we set context for ChatGPT, we always ask qualifying questions. So we might be able to take that one piece of the larger topic and break it down into something deeper, like how do you answer and set the context better? What are clarifying questions we should ask ChatGPT? What if we're not satisfied with the questions that originally set? So chances are you're missing a lot of depth in a topic that can add value and help solve some challenges for people. The next piece might just be showing examples of how you applied something. So, hey, we've given you this example, but here's what it looked like in real life. So there are tons of opportunities and content you probably have already done where you can either extend it, so talk about it in more depth, or you can showcase how the thing worked in real life and give that application. Now, if let's say you're B2B or B2C and you're just trying to show it, like sometimes it might be getting testimonials and talking to clients like, hey, this is how we've applied it, and here's so-and-so to talk about it. But anytime you start to hit your head against the wall, like, I can't come up with ideas, go back and look at some of your best performing content and figure out where can I go deeper, or what are other things I could explain about what worked and help build off of that success.
I like how you talk about it was kind of like using different types of frameworks to explain the same thing to, because some people will understand it one way, some people will understand it a different way. Some ways might be more effective, some might be less effective. That's actually something that I've been starting to do since an old conversation that we had about GPT was when I ask it to write something, whatever it is, I give it the goal that I'm trying to achieve. And I ask, what are the frameworks that you know of that would best help to achieve it if we're writing this thing? So I think that's cool that there's a parallel there. I guess my next question is, if we were going to try and come up with something fresh, or a fresh way of presenting what we've already discussed, where would you look to for inspiration for that? I guess you've kind of touched on it in looking at old content and effective content, but do you have any other places that you would look to for inspiration?
My favorite is usually two places. One, I like looking and just taking a look at what's going on in different social feeds. So I'm a big believer to always begin with the end in mind. If you don't know your customer journey, finding relevant content is really, really hard. The better that you map your content, your customer journey, the more you'll understand about which topics are relevant at one, what time of year, but number two, when and where they are in their journey. If you have seasonality in your business, it becomes a little bit easier to find topics. For example, if I'm an agency that serves e-commerce, I should probably be talking about how to set up Black Friday, Cyber Monday campaigns, because that's where most of the clients are right now. They're figuring out like, hey, we're going to be going to market with our early push. What do we need to do? So seasonality is a big thing. Number two, like customer journey mapping, is understanding like what's going on economically, socioeconomically, politically that might impact clients. So are there things happening in the news that are relevant to my client base that I need to talk? Now, that's typically going to be more B2B. If you have regulatory bodies like, Association of X, they probably have announcements. Those are good places to look at. And then just give your perspective. How does X impact Y? The last piece is just go look for trending topics. Every social media platform. So go to the one that you have the most active audience or that your customers are on the most. Literally just look through the trends. In a great spot, to be honest, go look at your top competition and figure out, hey, what are they talking about that has a lot of engagement that we have a lot of value that we can add? We actually I've trained a number of our clients. Like, if they don't have a huge social budget, I've trained their sales teams to go prospect and look at, hey, what are people talking about on common posts? Whether it's news, whether that's prospects. So there's a lot of insight in terms of like, what are people talking about and how can we add value to that conversation? And when you can do that, I'm not going to say it's a limitless ability to post, but it's going to at least help figure out like, oh, you know what? We had this client we solved this problem for. Let me walk through that and give them examples. So if you're stuck, don't just necessarily rely on ChatGPT or some AI. Go look outside, figure out, hey, what are people talking about? How can I solve it? Then you can bring that back. Hey, help me generate 10 to 20 ideas on these topics to help X customer solve that. Then you can really expand the footprint of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I like, and LinkedIn has a good feature for that, where like I get the little notifications that say, here are the top posts in your industry. And so I've gone through those a few times. So that's, yeah, a lot of places have little helpful tools like that.
There is one thing I always struggle with. Like, everyone's looking for a hack. Like, they're always looking for the way to cut the corner. But the thing is, social media platforms specifically and content marketing is best done when it's genuine. And the more you have a pulse on what the conversation is and the challenges the people, your audience is looking for, the more authentic the type of content you can create. Much like this. Like, we had 2 clients this week ask us this exact question. We had this question. So it's something you bring to the forefront. So the more relevancy you have, the better your content's going to perform. So this is the one challenge. It's ironic because we are talking a lot about how to leverage AI, but if you don't have the context and relevancy, I don't care how well you use AI, your content will fall flat.
Yeah. I was going to say that too. I really like how we do practice what you're saying here. And like, a lot of these conversations that we have on this show stem from other conversations we have when we're doing work with clients. Or last week's episode, when we were talking with Andrew Donovan, came from a conversation that I had with him a few hours before. So it's all like relevant stuff that people are talking about and that we're interested in and stuff that we're trying to figure out ourselves. And so I think that's pretty cool. Do you have any other advice or thoughts for people looking for answers to some of these questions?
I think if you look back at the evolution, just as a species on how we communicate, we're natural storytellers. Like even if you go way, way back, go ancient Egypt. I mean, you have the what are they called? The graphics. What are they called? The
The
writing on all the pyramids.
hieroglyphics?
Thank you. Hieroglyphics. It's a tough word to say when you're live.
Yeah.
But like you look at those, go back, hundreds of years before or thousands of years before that, we have cave paintings. So like we've been communicating through story. And the challenge is like when you get to the point we're at now, it's just that attention has split from, print to radio to television to social media. So now it's more about figuring out how am I going to reach my audience on the right platform with the right type of conversation in the right medium? We made a decision that we're going to go from seasons to doing a weekly live show because it's the most timely and the most accurate. We don't have time for the algorithm to catch up. So when we're preparing and we're having timely conversations, it's like prepping similar to a news show. So we know like, hey, if this is something we're talking about and we've had some other feedback, it's probably something other people are talking about. So it matches the format and the output of what we're doing. If we were doing something more methodical, and probably one of my favorite annual things, so Mary Meeker, she publishes the Internet Report. That has to be a text document. It comes out once a year, and the distribution's the same time every year. So their content medium matches what the delivery is. So I think some of it has to do with just finding more and more alignment with what you're trying to accomplish, who you're trying to reach, and the platforms you're on, and not necessarily just rush and produce content for content's sake. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons people run into content roadblocks is they're just going through the motions and they've lost focus on the values and the goals of what they're trying to accomplish with the content in general.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to what you're saying earlier in like having those conversations with people and because then you get to learn. You're not just producing content from nothing. You're learning what the problems are and you're learning what people are talking about and what they're wondering about. And then that's a really good way to tailor your content to what people are actually looking to see from you. So I it all ties in there. That's pretty nice.
Well, 100%. And when I did my first podcast, A Happiness or Pursuit, it was started because I just wanted to learn what entrepreneurs were doing. Like, how did they build these great businesses? It wasn't until I started that I realized like podcasts are an incredible way to get to know somebody in their story. It opened up so many business opportunities, but that wasn't the original intent. But the really cool part and why podcasts took off so much is it was a way for people to understand more stories about other people or other subjects. And it's delivered in a way we're all used to. I mean, we grow up, fortunately, hopefully most of us, getting told stories as we're kids, whether it's going to bed or whether it's at school. So it's just cool how that medium has now taken off and given opportunity for people to tell their brand story, their personal story, or their entrepreneurial story. And that's why I think the podcasts who do more guest type episodes, it's a little easier than when you're trying to do informational or instructional episodes. So if you find like, hey, I'm constantly coming up with this roadblock, I can't come up with enough topics, maybe adapt the format and bring on a guest. Go ask somebody like, hey, you're an expert in X field that's related to my audience. I want to interview you so I can hear stories so they can get value from you. And that's a good way to fill the gap if you're really struggling to produce content on your own.
And that's what we started off with is even if you get someone on who maybe you're talking about the same topic that you normally talk about, but it's still a fresh perspective and they're still going to say things that no one else is going to say because they have unique opinions. So that's another good reason to be doing that.
Well, I look at that's what the news is pretty much every day, well, at least CNN and Fox and what other ones there are. That's what they do. They bring on a red one and a blue one and just let them argue and sell ads in between in the breaks. That is what news has become today. It's just, differing opinions, different perspectives, and hopefully somebody can grab onto those little tidbits in between.
Hey, it works. A lot of people watch the news.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, we don't have any fail learn or anything because I think the only learning is just stay healthy, take lots of vitamins in the cold season for Ben.
Yeah, get your flu shot.
Exactly. Get your flu shot. For those of you who want, for those of you who don't, depends what news network you watch. Totally up to you. We don't have that debate today, but awesome. Well, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Next week, we will have I think either next week or the following week, we have one of our PR pros is coming on. They are going to be talking about how PR is more than just social media and content planning, all the things that we do across our agency groups. And she's got a pretty cool perspective. I don't know if that's next week or the following week, but we will be back to some regular things, show you some behind the scenes prompts. We got some real cool new prompts that we've been playing with. Some data analytics tools, which will be coming up the next few episodes. I actually had to build an entire media buying campaign, and it performed really, really well over the past few weeks. So that one will be fun to share. As always, if you have any questions, comments, feedback, we want it all. Just put it in the comments wherever you are watching this. If you're watching the live one, thank you. We will see you all next week. Thanks for joining me, John, and everybody else. We'll see you soon.
Take care.